we grew up, things weren't like they are today. You know, we didn't have all these big flat screen TVs and everything and all these technological advances and all that. The only TV we had when I was growing up was a little 12-inch black and white TV. And if the weather was just right, you could get 3 channels, you know, because ABC was like 100 miles away, and the wind had to be blowing right, I think, to get it. So it was real interesting to do that. And, you know, we didn't have these remote controls like you see everywhere now. Do you know what we used for remote control? Well, it was close to that. It was vice grips. Needle nose vice grips. I didn't even know TVs had knobs till I think it was in college. Okay? And you know, every TV we owned had needle nose vice grips on it. You know, and the antennas weren't these, you know, serving platters hung up on the side of your house or cables coming out of the wall. It was little rabbit ears, and if you just looked at them the wrong way, they broke. You know, do you remember these? And what did you use after they broke off? Coat hanger. This is starting to get real familiar now. And if the coat hanger didn't work right, what did you do? There we go. Now this is and the problem was we didn't have a whole lot of money, and my father really didn't want to waste the aluminum foil. And so my father found out really early on that what even worked better than that was if I stood there and got the TV. You remember how, if you touched it, the picture got a lot better? And so most of my life I thought TVs were like this wide because that's how they looked as I was trying to, my father could watch the TV and I could stand there like this the whole time. So it made it interesting. And one of my favorite shows on TV, these old sets. One of my favorite shows on TV was the Beverly Hillbillies, and you don't have to be Freud to figure this out. I'm a poor kid growing up in the country hoping to make it big someday. And, here we go. Poor people from the country making it big. And it was a great story, a great show. Even today, it comes on TV land. And they had my favorite episode on the other day, and I wanted to tell you quickly. I need a Sue, you can come. Come here. I need a volunteer to come here. Let's give Sue another big hand for what she did. Does anybody remember Jed's dog? Remember what his name was? Duke. For the next 2 minutes, Sue, you will be Duke. Okay? You know what sound like?
I do.
Okay, make one for me. There, perfect. All right, when I talk to you, when I point to you, I want you to make that sound. You're going to make this song.
Great.
Ready?
I'm ready.
All right, here we go. One day, Jed is sitting out by the cement pond whittling, and his old dog Duke's laying there next to him, and old Duke's making this sound.
Oh.
There we go. Good. And Mr. Drysdale, the baker man, comes up and says, "Hey, Jed." Jed says, "Hey, Mr. Drysdale." And old Duke looks up at Mr. Drysdale and goes, and then Ellie Mae walks by, and she's on her way to go swim with her critters down in the cement pond. And they would say, "Hey, Ellie Mae." Ellie Mae says, "Hey." And old Duke looks up at Ellie Mae, and he says, and then Jethro comes by, and he's on his way to Mr. Drysdale's office because he's setting up his double knot spy office up there. Remember that? And they say, "Hey" to Jethro. Jethro says, "Hey" to them. And old Duke looks up at Jethro, and he goes, and then Granny comes by, and she's got a load of firewood, and she's got to go tend the still because she needs some more of her rheumatism medicine. And they say, "Hey" to Granny. Granny says, "Hey" to them, and Duke looks up at Granny and goes, then Mr. Drysdale goes, "Mr. Clampett, I just got to ask, what's wrong with old Duke?" And Jed quit whittling for a minute, and he says, "Well, see, Jethro walked through here the other day with a big old bag of roofing tacks and dropped some right where old Duke likes to lay, and he's laying on one of them, I figured." And he went back to whittling, and Duke goes, and Mr. Drysdale says, "Well, I don't understand. Why don't he just move?" And Jed said, "Well, I guess that old roofing tack's hurting Duke, but not enough to make him want to actually get up and do something about it." And there is a lesson for us in the utility industry that it's easy to point out what's wrong, and it's sometimes fun to complain about what's going on. But getting up and doing something about it is what will make the pain go away and what will take us a step forward. Let's give a big hand for Tricia. That's a lesson that we need to learn going forward. Now, I don't want to just pick on the utilities industry because it's not the only industry that has problems with this. Restaurants all over the country are failing because they don't understand the same problem as well. And I love this, one of my favorite shows on TV, Kitchen Nightmares, Gordon Ramsay, again, you don't have to be Freud to figure this out. Somebody gets paid millions of dollars to come into a business and yell and cuss at everybody, and people love him for it. There's my fantasy. It doesn't seem to work in my utility, but one day. So, the secret to all of these makeover shows is just being able to open your eyes and see what's going on. Now, these were successful restaurants that are now failing. Now, they didn't just suddenly start failing one day. They failed slowly over time. And when Gordon Ramsay comes in, the place is filthy, the waiters have attitude, and the food's barely edible. And it didn't get that way in one day. It got that way slowly over time, so slowly that nobody even saw it, so slowly that it was actually indivisible to the people that were running the restaurant. And when they interview them and when they talk to them and say, what do you think your problems are? Well, our problem is we don't have enough customers coming in and our prices aren't high enough to support what the profit we want to make. Now, what restaurant problem is not going to be solved by just making more people pay higher prices for bad food served in a dirty restaurant by waiters with an attitude? Okay? What utility problem is not going to be solved by just forcing our customers to pay higher prices for the same old good enough for government work service we have grown so accustomed to delivering to them. And if we're going to change, if we're going to do something dramatic, if we're going to change the entire direction of where we're going, we've got to address that and say good enough is not good enough anymore. We've got to go in a whole new direction. Now, it could be worse. Imagine what would go on if restaurants interacted with their customers the way utilities interact with our customers. Take over a local restaurant with your local utility company, and you might get this. Come to Applebee's. We work hard every day not to kill you with our food. And you really should appreciate it more. Welcome to the Olive Garden. Our prices could be much lower if the Board of Health didn't make us throw out all the rancid meat. And if you think I'm exaggerating, tell me the last utility conference you went to that didn't have some self-righteous general manager or director stand up and go, we're on the front line, you gotta have the right hair. We're on the front line of defense against waterborne disease, and if we don't do our job right, 365 days a year, people could get sick and people die. It has happened before, and you're absolutely right. And can we all agree that not killing our customer is a very low standard? Okay? Minimum compliance with our federal regulations shouldn't be a goal. It should be a given. If we want more from our customers, we better be communicating value better to them. And increasing the value that we give them is more than telling them they're a bunch of ungrateful SOBs. Okay? Delivering value to them means giving them something more that they're not accustomed to. Now, we all know I could spend $1 million more on my operation improving water quality, and not a single customer would even notice. I could spend $1 million cleaning up my effluent even more, and not a single customer would even notice. That's not where the value is going to come in our operation. The value is going to come in communicating it to them on their terms in ways that they can see and touch and feel and understand and take to heart. And that's a whole new way of thinking about the utility industry that we've got to go down. Now, communicating value like that is a whole new way of thinking. Communicating it all to our customers is a whole new way of thinking, because I talk to a lot of utilities around the country and they say, oh, Rob, you don't understand. Our goal is to be as quiet as possible. No news is good news. Fly below the radar screen. If nobody knows we're here, nobody can call the mayor and complain. And we just try to keep our head down. And the problem is, I love, the idea of invisibility is cool. The old Invisible Man movies were really cool, except for at the end of every one of those movies, he always got caught. And the reason he got caught was he's not nearly as invisible as he thinks he is. And he'd always do something to let everybody know he's there. He'd bump into a table, or he'd knock over a glass, or he'd cough or something. And then everybody would get all mad that, well, he's been here the whole time? It's the same thing with the utility. We're not nearly as invisible as we think we are. In fact, most utilities remind customers we're here every single month. How do we do that? Send them a bill. And then every year, or maybe every other year, we remind them we're here again. What is that? Rate increase. I've got a brother-in-law that the only time he ever calls me is when he wants money. That's not a relationship I enjoy, okay? Why do we want that to be the relationship we have with our customers? We can do better. We can set our standards higher. We can interact with customers in a whole new way that'll take this to a new level, and that's where we've got to go. Now, the other issue that I want to talk to you about is the fact we are always communicating to our customers, whether we understand it or not. We're always communicating something. And I want to tell you, I learned this. I have the most beautiful, intelligent, long-suffering, patient wife you can imagine. And, you know, I've been married to her for 23 years. And she was an English major at school, and she told me that she actually read Dante's Inferno. There is a level of hell that involves being married to an engineer. So, you know, she's been good at everything she's ever attempted except found herself a good man. I'm the happy recipient of her low standards. So, my wife, she does have this one quirk. Well, okay, one that I'll talk about today, okay? Since she's not here. She loves Oreo cookies. She doesn't even call them Oreo cookies, she calls them my cookies. And when she writes them down on the grocery list, it's my cookies. And when we go to the store, she goes, run over and get me a bag of my cookies. It's the double stuffed Oreos. You know, Oreos are okay. How many of you like Oreos? They're okay. They're not my favorite cookie. I'll eat them, but, you know, she just absolutely loves them. They have to be in the house. And I was sitting on the couch watching a football game one day, and my wife came in, and she's got this bag in her hand, and she's walking very slowly up to me, and I knew this was a bad sign. Did you eat the last of my Oreos? I said, I might have had, you know, a couple yesterday. Maybe. She goes, did you know that the empty bag is still sitting on the counter over there? And, you know, being the engineer and the problem solver and the helpful person that I am, I said, well, you know, if the bag's empty, you can probably go ahead and throw it away. Which, if you're taking notes, that's not the answer, you know. Underline that twice. And she said, I just got back from the store. I hate going to the store. And if I had known we were out of my cookies, I could have gotten me more of my cookies. And being the helpful engineer that I am, problem solver, I said, well, why don't you write it down on your list so you won't forget it next time? And again, write that down. That's not the correct answer. My wife didn't speak to me for 2 days after that. Okay? Now, let me gauge where we are as a crowd, okay? Men only by applause. Let me ask you, how many of you think it's pretty stupid to have a 2-day-long fight with your wife about cooking? Now, ladies, let me ask you a question. By applause, how many of you think that that fight didn't have anything to do with the cookie whatsoever?
Yeah.
You would be correct. The reason my wife was upset with me was because I told her, I don't care about you, I don't care about your time, and because I don't care about you or your time, I don't love you. Now, I didn't use those exact words, but that's what she heard. And we are communicating all the time with our customers in ways that tell them things that we don't think we're saying.